the factors at play. Look, there are 4 legs on a horse. There's advertising, there's editorial, there's circulation and there's marketing. Now our advertising is poor, our circulation is poor. I would argue that our editorial is good and that we've tried to preserve the quality of writing and the standard of our work. And people in the Tribune have taken pay cuts. They've worked very hard to do that. But we don't have a marketing or a circulation strategy because we simply don't have the money for it. So an investor coming in would have to take all of that into the equation. I think that there is a viable future for us, but it will take a lot more work.
I say it's a viable future for him. For him. Independent news and media have lost a huge amount of money on the newspaper since 1993, 94. What is it? It's about 60 million.
Yeah, I think it's 59 million. Yeah.
So it's not a very inviting prospect for a new investor.
No, and that question was asked today, I mean, of the receiver, of the managing director and of the chairman of the board, you know, and they didn't have they don't have a pat answer for it. You know, Independent News and Media has been extremely supportive of us. They have this huge debt that's owed to them. I don't think it's reasonable to think that anybody coming in is going to be able to pay 59 million, but obviously that would have to be negotiated.
I would have thought, well, negotiated with whom?
Well, I presume with INM, Vincent, but that's, again, as I say to you, I can't answer you on the business side of it. I came into the Tribune 6 years ago. It had been losing money a very long time before I came into it. It has been a loss maker for a long number of years.
You didn't think of going to NAMA with it and getting NAMA to pay you about it, but... No. No,
I think all these roundabout questions are, yeah, you were probably a better editor than I was.
No,
I've done
no,
me best.
I almost certainly
we are
wasn't.
Where we are.
No, I wasn't. I feel very sorry about it because I was an editor of the paper for 11 years, I think. Yeah, 11 years.
Well, I'm 6 years today, to the day. So.
Really, is that right? Yeah. Well, I very much hope that things come right for you. I think it would be a big loss, and I thought the paper did very well. I thought your relaunch with the compact edition was really fine, and it's a great pity that you're in this difficulty now. I hope somebody comes along. All right, let's go to the front pages of tomorrow morning's newspapers, and we start with the Irish Daily Star, and it leads with the story that we've been talking about on this on the programme up to now. Rabbit on the run, Labour Party leader apologises for Andy Gray's sexist gaffe. Andy Gray. The Labour Party Rabbit has forced to apologise last night for an Andy Gray type remark about Fianna Fáil's front bench women. Last night the veteran TD told the Star, if anyone took offence for my remarks then I apologise. He loved the reference to him as the veteran TD as well, I suspect. Over here on the left, a diplomat gets boot over fake passports. In the Irish Times, Khan bows out with call for respect for election campaign. February 25th is named as date for the election, and further down the paper we might get to it later. Russian diplomat expelled over forged Irish passports. In the Irish Examiner, in your hands, February 25th, every voter date with destiny and chance to rebuild Ireland. Really an innovative front page there in the Irish Examiner. And down at the bottom of the Irish Examiner, you'll see Corrie in the clink. TV soap cleans up bad behaviour in jail. And the Irish Sun, Trinity's sex swap prof, Greek lecturer was man. A boffin at the country's top university is transsexual. Lecturer Dr. Martin Cyprus, who teaches Greek at Trinity College, has switched course from male to female. The brave PhD used to be Martin, but now wears earrings and carries a handbag. So what?
I think they're implying that it's his and her fault, the situation we're in. It's obviously it's a really important story to be putting on the front of a newspaper, but at a time like this.
So what? Like, this is, anyway. The Irish Daily Mail. Did you pick her up down Grafton Street? First day, first gaff as Rabbit ignites sexist storm over Martin's new women. Pat Rabbit has apologised after dismissing Fianna Fáil's new front benches as a couple of good-looking women. He didn't dismiss them as a couple of good-looking women. The former Labour leader's insult came on the day an emotional Brian Cowan dissolved the Dáil, kicking off a bruising campaign. Dismissing Micheál Martin's new team, Mr Rabbit said, you might as well wander down Grafton Street and see if you can meet a couple of good-looking women and say, would you ever mind coming up for the photograph? It's only for 4 weeks. In the Irish Independent, Fine Gael blow, but Kenny on course for Taoiseach. New coalition on way to winning up to 100 seats. There you can see it, Fine Gael at 20%, which is down 4 percentage points on the previous poll done by the Irish Independent Millward Brown Lansdowne poll. The Labour Party at 24%, Fianna Fáil at 16%, Sinn Féin at 13%, Green Party 1%, Independents 15%. Those figures are more or less the same figures that have been around for quite a while now, and it will be quite difficult to shift it, which will be alarming news for Fianna Fáil. That stuck in mid-teens is going to be a very, very big difficulty for them. Also in the newspapers, let's go to the London Independent. Is that the one we have next? The London Independent, a fantastic photograph from Cairo yesterday, $1 million demand change in the report in the London Independent by Robert Fisk. Let's have a look at some detail of that independent poll, and particularly the the bit about the satisfaction with party leaders. We can go to it, I think, here. There you see it. You can see Brian Cowan, again, doing really badly. 80% dissatisfaction, 88% dissatisfaction, 10% satisfied. Eamon Gilmore, 48% satisfied and 38% dissatisfied. So his net popularity rating isn't good. Enda Kenny, very bad again, 24%, 27% satisfied and 59% dissatisfied. John Gormley, 14% satisfied, 72% dissatisfied. Jerry Adams, also bad, 31% satisfied, I think 59% dissatisfied. But look at Micheál Martin, 44% satisfied with his performance and only 30% dissatisfied. I think Micheál Martin has the best, I think, yes, he has the best net satisfaction rating of all the leaders. Nóirín, that's quite significant, I think. He has certainly, even though this is the guy who was sat at the cabinet table all these years, must bear the responsibility for the disasters that have occurred, given his responsibility as member of the cabinet. And yet, this guy has been regarded as the saviour of the country. It's something odd.
Well, it was quite remarkable so quickly for the Sunday Business Post at the weekend that his rating was up, and now it's replicated again in the Irish Independent poll. You see, politicians would always have us believe, and in fact a lot of us in the media maybe fool ourselves as well, that it's all about policy. Likeability is a huge factor, personality is a huge factor, and if people detect a sincerity in an individual, if they detect that they have integrity and trust and they're not trying to hoodwink them and they're telling it as it is and they're trying to be straight and they're trying to be honest about it. And in Micheál Martin's case, he did say he was sorry, and it's obviously struck a chord with people, and they believe him. And obviously they're also looking at him and saying, regardless of what happened in the past, maybe he's a better guy for the future. Now, whether they feel the same about Fianna Fáil is not clear, because Fianna Fáil is still at 16%, but likewise Fine Gael is up at 30% and Enda's down. So, maybe what we need is a national government with Micheál Martin leading it and Fine Gael as the majority.
I'm leaving. I think the headline on this actually should be 44% of Irish adults believe in Santa Claus. Genuinely. If people can't make the split in their heads between the party and the guy. But there again, I'm very black and white about these things. I think if you've been, dancing with the people that have brought us to this, you really should take a bit of the credit for it rather than this thing. And I love the way it says Micheál Martin, new entry, like he's a Jedward single. It's just, it's bizarre. Although the best thing on that page for me is the satisfied 10% for Brian Cowan. As Brian Lennon would say, he came joint last.
The Irish Times have an interesting page inside on the battleground for the elections. Here you see it, I think. Showing the constituencies that are going to be vital in this election campaign. In fact, the answer is that almost every constituency is going to be vital. And one of the big issues will be how many constituencies and how many of the 43 constituencies will Fianna Fáil fail to win a seat. And it's almost unthinkable. It was unthinkable before that there'd be any constituencies that Fianna Fáil would lose a seat, would fail to get a single seat. And it looks now as though there's been loads of constituencies that fail.
Well, the Evening Herald did a story last week showing that Sinn Féin, according to the internal Fianna Fáil polling, Sinn Féin was likely to get the last seat, certainly in the 5-seater constituencies. You know, you look at the strategy that Fianna Fáil have at the moment, and yes, Noel O'Flynn stood down in favour of Billy Kelleher in Cork. But the reality is, in places like where Conor Lenihan and Charlie O'Connor are running, where Mary Hanafin is running against Barry Andrews, the likelihood is there will be no Fianna Fáil seat in those areas, and they're just two of the big beasts that we're mentioning. But that's going to be replicated all over the country because Micheál Martin hasn't changed that. Bar one candidate, nobody else has stepped aside or moved constituency.
John Cregan has stepped aside in Limerick West.
Yes, sorry, excuse me, I stand corrected. But there hasn't been a wholesale move.
Nola Hearn stood aside in Dublin North, in Dublin Northwest. Noel Flynn stood aside in Cork North
yes,
Central.
Yeah. But it won't be enough, Vincent, is the point I'm making. You'd want to have a totally different strategy. When you're on 16% in the polls, it's a very different proposition to being on 40+%.
I don't know. PJ Maher is now very much involved. Tony Collina, I think, is Director of Elections, but I think PJ Maher is back very much with a decisive role in the Fianna Fáil election campaign. And PJ has argued for years that candidate strategy is utterly crucial to maximising the vote, and his view will be you've got to ensure that there's only one candidate in almost all constituencies.
And he knows what he's talking about. I mean, he's maximised the vote in the 2007 election and previous elections.
That's right, And I'd expect that PJ's race will run in
I think there's probably an element of comfort for Fianna Fáil voters and for Fianna Fáil organisers and commons around the country at the moment in Micheál Martin's popularity. But a bit like we saw the female politicians here tonight, they're all very tribal about it. The Sinn Féin candidate thinks there's nobody like Gerry Adams. The reality is personality there is hugely important. Pierce Doherty has given Sinn Féin a massive boost because there's a likeability factor. Gerry Adams, every time he comes on, I think people turn off and they know that he doesn't know what he's talking about. So, you know, people respond, they're not stupid. And yeah, it's easy to think that 44% are deluded because they think that Micheál Martin will be the next leader of Fianna Fáil. That's the reality, that's the electorate. They're not stupid. They know what they're seeing.
Morgan's going to tell us a bit about social media, Twitter and Facebook and what's going on there. And I think it's going to be quite important what's going on there. Most of our viewers, I think, including myself, don't really get involved in this Twitter and Facebook stuff. But an awful lot of younger people do. And that's going to be a part of it. You're not that much younger, but
no.
Yeah, what an old fella like you doing that.
Well, you know, one of my kids asked me to fix it, and I just got hooked. Yeah, no, there's been an awful lot on Twitter today. Actually, an awful lot of saying to Nóirín, an awful lot of support for the Tribune, which is very good. Which is strange because normally when you're following a stream on Twitter, you get it is quite tribal. But then the Tribune story hit Twitter around the same time as Cowan saying, "Sorry, Mary, could you dissolve things? I've broken it." And suddenly the tribalism stopped, and there was just a huge upsurge of, that's terrible about the Tribune, but everybody should buy it this weekend.
Buy 2 copies.
Yeah. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
But then, you know, after all of the huggy-feely stuff about the Tribune, moved out of the way, back to tribalism.
You can look at Twitter. There's a section on Twitter dealing with the election. Just is it EL 11? Is that the hashtag?
The hashtag GE11.
Sorry,
yeah.
G11,
yeah.
And that's loads of tweets on the election campaign journal. What are people saying?
On the, let me see. This is proving that I'm not young because I've actually written it down on paper.
And look at it. Come on, tell us down.
Well, the kind of thing that's happening on your stream and on the G11 stream, anyone else thinks Micheál Martin looks like a young Mr. Burns? Or
Mr. Burns?
From The Simpsons. He looks like Pat Carey.
Yeah.
Okay, short.
He looks like Pat Carey?
Yeah. Pat Carey and Mr. Burns, never been seen in the same room at the same time. Taking more on this. David Schneider, good news for the Egyptian people. Looks like Mubarak's about to go. Bad news, he's being replaced by Brian Cowan. If nobody in the upcoming election votes any of the TDs in, that means there is no TD salaries to be paid. Am I correct legally? Possibly yes, but not grammatically.
Well, if nobody gets elected, then everybody would have to decline to vote. If one person voted, that the person for whom they'd vote would be elected, TD for something.
So you could have a landslide of one.
But
Cowan could get back in.
Well, go on, what else?
Let me see. My favourite tweet of the day. The Dáil may be dissolved, but remember, if symptoms persist after February 25th, please consult an Egyptian. I like that. I like what that, because obviously Twitter's been very big in what's been happening in Egypt these last couple of weeks.
And it's partly responsible for the millions of people on the streets today.
Yeah. Yeah, although I think also they do mass protest much better everywhere than here. That picture, great picture on the front of the London Independent. If that was a picture of protest here, it'd be one guy with a dog and a piece of string standing outside the Dáil.
It's surprising, really, because remember, of course, it's a little while ago, the Munster meetings, Daniel O'Connell's Munster meetings, and that was around 1842 or 43, and we seem to have lost the knack of Munster meetings since then.
Twitter was much more developed when O'Connell was around, you see.
OK, we'll get to talk a bit more about what's on social media, and we'll get to more on what's in the newspapers after the break. Welcome back. Let's have a further look at some of the inside pages of tomorrow morning's newspapers. We'll look at page 16 of the Irish Independent, and we're just going to go down a little further on that page. Party faces fight to avoid poll wipeout, and that's to do with the Green Party. The Green Party is facing a wipeout in the polls. Voters look set to exact revenge on the former junior government party in the forthcoming election, with just 1% of those surveyed in today's Irish Independent Millward Brown Lansdowne survey indicating they will vote Green this time around. I wouldn't be that confident if I were a member of the Green Party that the party will do well, would you? No,
I think they'd argue that they made their mark in government. The reality, I think, for most of the electorate is it's very hard to remember what did they do or what were they responsible for. The climate change bill is not going to happen. The civil partnership legislation had to be put on the back burner because of the finance bill. So, you know, I can't off the top of my head think of a single thing. You know, you think of Eamon Ryan, you think of the row over free-to-air rugby, you know, and I'm sure he doesn't want to be distinguished for that. I think of John Gormley and I think of this ludicrous row over the incinerator in his backyard. So that's their problem, is it? It's hard to think.
Also in the Irish Independent, there's this story, a non-party runners in line for 25 seats. These are independent candidates. Despite the high-profile failure of the much-vaunted Democracy Now! Movement, the number of independent TDs in the Dáil is set to treble. Latest results of the poll support for the independents is at 15%. This means that the 31st Dáil could be home to up to 25 local and in many cases single-issue TDs as disillusioned voters turn their back on the established parties. That would be interesting if the balance of if a government was elected with a very small majority. But it looks as though the government will be elected with a huge majority, probably in the region of 30 seats.
It does, although I think that the independence is a very interesting proposition. You know, whether you can find coherence between the disparate elements that will be there within the independence or not is the question. You know, you look at somebody like Shane Ross, who I think will certainly win a seat in Dublin South. You know, a very honourable individual, and what people want is more people like that. So I think it's a shame that Democracy Now! Was thwarted by the time issue and that people couldn't run, because they're absolutely the shot in the arm that this election needed.
All right, let's look again at the front page of the Irish Independent and zoom in a bit on that photograph there. It's a photograph of the Cowan family leaving Áras an Uachtaráin. Morgan, you were saying that there's a lot of tweeting about this.
Well, actually, I just saw that picture, and it's the Independent doing a public service showing us what a family that isn't going to miss any meals this year looks like. But they were obviously very cagey leaving the Áras, because if you look behind that pillar, they appear to have been taken out past where the officers have the urinal. I'm not entirely sure why they didn't use the front door, but it's a real sneak out. There's been an awful lot of finally, please just go, don't trip over your arrogance and ego about Brian Cowan. He's not coming off at all well on Twitter. I don't even think he'd get the 10% on Twitter.
Well, I thought that his speech in the Dáil today was very dignified, and I thought that the presence of his family there was really quite nice. And he obviously there's a very close family. I know his wife slightly, and they really are a good couple together, and she's been a great supporter. And I think that's a nice photograph, and I think he's leaving with considerable dignity today, and I think we should allow him that.
I think it's a very poignant image, I have to say, because if you remember, the last time the family was photographed in the papers was when he got the job as such, and it became Taoiseach in 2008.
I'm afraid I got to leave it there. For more today's programme, log on to tv3.ie. The weather's next from us tonight. Good night.
Avonmore fresh soup. Delicious homemade taste, whatever the weather.
Yes, we've got clear skies in a number of places now, but they're going to change overnight, folks, as a warm front kicks into the west and northwest and brings some rain with it too. And the wind's picking up quite a bit of pace too, as you might have noticed, and some choppy seas are expected. It's the first day of February, and there's a little more rain about during tomorrow. We had a nice day today, so we won't grumble about it too much, I suppose. And we'll get some sunshine during Wednesday too. So this rain developing through Mayo, Sligo and Donegal will start to push in a southerly direction. Under the clearer skies, temperatures back as low as 2 degrees, but they will start to rise as that cloud system starts to push through. I'm looking at 8, and even by the time the rain arrives in the south and southwest, 9 degrees in these places. But it's really the winds, especially to the west and northwest, that are going to be a big feature tonight as they gust up to gale force and give off choppy seas. The wind and rain will cause problems. We'll see a covering of cloud and all these damp and windy conditions in the morning time, and that will start to pull away to the southeast to be replaced by showers and some sunshine too. Some brightness starting to creep in. The showers, though, will be blustery and will continue to add to the surface water that will be left behind in a lot of places by the overnight rain. Temperatures, well, I suppose if there's a positive, along with some of the sunshine, there's also the temperatures, which will start from about 7 degrees, but will be upwards of 9, 10 and even 11 degrees the further south we go. The unfortunate thing is the winds will stay strong and will continue to cause problems and will take the edge off those values. We're looking at choppy seas, folks. It looks as if the seas will remain on the moderate to rough side in a number of places, even rough to high in the west and northwest and high along that north coast. That's it. Bye-bye.
Avonmore fresh soup. Delicious soup in a range of great value handy sizes.